Hello everyone, in this video I'm going to show you how to set up a basic p5.js canvas and to both position that canvas somewhere on your page and then do some basic drawing inside of it. Alright, I have a web project ready to go that I've already created as sort of a template. So I've got my text editor Atom open here, as you can see. And I'm just going to take my project and drag it into there. There's nothing really inside this yet. I just kind of have a template HTML page, as you can see here. No associated JavaScript yet at this time. So again, we're using the p5.js library. And for those of you that don't know what p5 is, it's a library that's written on top of the HTML canvas element. And basically what it does is it makes the process of drawing and animating a little bit simpler. It's particularly nice for people who've used a processing environment for coding before and may be familiar with the types of drawing commands and animation commands that are available in that environment. So I actually happen to have the p5.js window or web page open. This is the Getting Started page from that site. And you can also, and probably are going to want to come here and look at this yourself. But basically, if you just read through it, what you learn very quickly is that there are two ways of including p5.js in your web project. One way is to actually download the entire library itself and then include it in your project folder. And if we did that, it would sort of, the actual file would appear over here in this area of the project tree in Atom. I'm not going to do that. Instead, another option is to use an online version of the library. There are these content delivery networks you can see here. That's what the CDN stands for. And basically what you have here is just a site that is hosting the p5.js library. And so you can just include the script tag right in your head tag of your HTML. And then you'll have p5.js. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that from the Getting Started page. I'm going to come back over here and paste it inside my head tag, as you can see. And this basically is no better or worse than downloading it myself and including it in my own project. It's a little quicker, and it makes my project directory smaller, certainly. Okay, so that's that. I've got that included, and the other thing I'm going to do then is just after I include that script tag, I'm going to include another script tag, and I'm going to have to create this script. This is going to be my drawing script, so I'm going to call it, for lack of a better term, drawing script.js. Okay, and we'll close that tag as well. There we go. Now, I know in previous examples, I've told you to take this script tag, which is linked to a JavaScript file of your own, and put it here at the end of the body. Right, and then put some of your other HTML tags up here, such as a header. Hello, P5. Now, you can do this if you want to. And there are specific reasons why there are times you might want to do this. In this case, it's not necessary because the p5.js library is able to kind of wait until the DOM is built before it actually executes these functions that we're going to write inside of this script. So you can, in fact, leave this script tag up here in the head section of your HTML page. And it will work. All right. While we're at it, let's take a look at the page. So I'll save this, and switching over to my browser, I'll just take, and I'm now going to kind of drag that project in here and open it up. And you can see it says Hello P5. While I'm at it, I'll open up my console on the right-hand side. If you take a look, there is an error, and it's a resource that isn't loaded. Basically what I'm doing is looking for this, the browser is looking for drawing script.js and not finding it because I haven't created that file yet. So let's go ahead and do that. So up here in my project directory tree, I'm going to right click, make a new file, And let's create that one, drawing script.js. Notice, by the way, I'm not using any fancy project structures with subfolders and such. I'm just going to put my index.html and JS files right here at the same level. I don't even have a public folder because I'm just interested in kind of showing you this tutorial as quickly as possible. All right, as is always good practice, I'm going to throw an alert inside here just to make sure that the JavaScript is indeed hooked up, and save that, and then we'll come back, refresh the page. Sorry. Okay, and there's the alert, so I know I'm connected. All right, we'll get rid of that. All right, now it's time to actually do something with P5. Now, in previous lessons, I showed you that if you wanted to draw on the canvas, what you did was you went ahead and you sort of just made a canvas element right here, right now, in your HTML. When you work with P5, you don't do that. Instead, what you do is you actually create the canvas in this drawing script file right here. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the P5 documentation, the Getting Started page, and scroll down the page for a little bit and just kind of look at how it's done. And I find this section right about here. All right. And what it indicates is that there is, in P5, there are, first of all, two basic functions that you need to override and to define. And these are the same functions that you're going to be familiar with from processing when you use that in a previous course. You can see those functions are called setup and draw. And I'm going to write them right now, right here. Okay, in setup, you do all the typical things that you used to do when you used processing, and you were writing in Java syntax in the processing IDE. And there's a command here that you can pass inside of setup called create canvas. And you can give the canvas a specific size. I'm going to choose to make it 500 by 300. And I'm going to add a little bit to this that's not in the getting started. What I'm actually going to do here is create a variable to hold a reference to this canvas. And so I'm just going to say var canv equals create canvas 500, 300. All right, and there's a reason I want to do that, and I'll make that apparent later. You can also do other things inside of setup, sort of typical things that you would do in a processing environment as well, but that's all I'm going to do for just now. And then I'm going to write my draw function right here. Okay, and skipping some of the content that they have here, I'm just going to put a simple ellipse inside there. And I'm going to choose to draw the ellipse at a fixed place, like so. All right, so now's a good time to go see if it works. So having saved everything, I'll come back here to my HTML, to my browser rather, refresh the page, and it says hello P5, and you can see I've drawn an ellipse, so I'm assuming that it worked. The only thing at this point is you can't actually see the boundary of the canvas. Because I've created the canvas not in my HTML over here, but I've let P5 create the canvas for me, I haven't had the opportunity to style that canvas and put any border on it or any such thing. Now I know I can go ahead and I can actually draw a rectangle around it if I want to using a rect command. So I could draw a rectangle on the canvas itself that was equal to the actual size of the canvas, and that would show me what would be equivalent to a border. But if I wanted to do actually some CSS, if I wanted to actually give myself a real border, how do I access the canvas to set some of its style properties? Well, because I've used this variable right here to store the reference to the canvas in this JavaScript, I actually have the ability to do that. I can reference this canv variable right now, and I can add styles to it, and I can do anything that I want to. So that's what I'm going to do right now, is go ahead and just put a CSS border around this canvas. But before I do that, I'm actually going to do a console log of this canv variable for you. Okay, so I'll refresh the page. I want you to look over here at the console. And you can see the output right here. It's maybe a little bit more than I was hoping for. The actual variable over here that stores a reference to this, whatever is returned by this create canvas function, it's not just a canvas. It's actually a complex P5 object. And inside that object, there is a canvas, but there are some other properties as well. And if you just sort of scroll or just look through the list of different properties that exist inside this object, you'll see right here, this is what I'm really interested in, is the second thing right in here. ELT is the key for this property, and you can see the value of it. This is the canvas itself. This is what I want. So if I'm going to access the element, the canvas itself, to do anything to it, like to position it or to apply some CSS to it or some such thing, this is the property that I need to actually access. All right, so, and I'll show you what I mean by doing that. So let me just comment that line out for just a second. So at this point, I'm going to say canv.elt, and that gives me a reference to the actual canvas itself. And at this point, I can do anything I want to it, as I would typically do in JavaScript. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to type in style.border, because that's how you access the CSS border property from JavaScript. And I'm just going to say 2 pixels solid green, like so. Okay, and then let's preview it. All right, and there it is. So now you can see where the canvas actually is on the screen. Now, to show you, if I hadn't have done this correctly, if I had just sort of assumed that the canvas or the canv variable itself was the canvas, and I tried to go ahead and do that, it doesn't work. You can see when I refresh it, I don't get any border, and I also don't get any error message popping up in my console. Okay, so that could be a little bit confusing and lead to some frustration, which is why I'm showing it right now. All right, so let me put that back to the way that I had it. All right, so one last time, just remember that if you want to access the HTML element, the canvas itself, you're going to have to say canv.elt. All right, and that'll give you access that you need. And the reason we're doing this is because, remember, we didn't create the canvas here in the HTML and give it an ID. So we can't, up here in this code, do what we would typically do and say something like document.query selector, and then put in something like my canvas or some such thing. It'll be hashtag my canvas. So we can't do that because we didn't actually create the canvas in the HTML. So I know that's a little bit confusing, but I think going forward this will solve a lot of problems for you. All right, so I've got the canvas, and I've got the 2 pixel solid green marking around it. So what I want to do now is add a little bit of functionality and show you how you can attach an event listener to the canvas itself so that something about it will change when you, let's say, I think I'm going to use hovering over it. So I'm going to set this, I'm going to write this all in my setup function right here. Okay, and I'm simply going to take, again, I can reference my canv.elt. And I could set that equal to its own variable if I want to, so I don't have to keep typing can.elt. And I'm going to say add event listener, okay, the way you would to any HTML element. And the event I'm going to listen for is called a mouse over. But we can listen to many different kinds of events. I'm just picking this one as an example. Then I'm going to write my callback function. I'm going to just do it anonymously right here in line. Okay. And my callback function is, let's see, what do I want to have happen when I hover over the canvas? Let's change the style of the border to some other color. So I'm going to say this dot style dot border equals, and this time let's change colors to let's see, let's make it red, solid red, like that. Now I'm using this here because automatically when this is used inside the callback function for an event listener, this automatically refers to the element on which the event was detected. And in that case, it's the canvas. So I know I could also go back here and I could say canv dot ELT. This would accomplish the same thing, all right? But it's a little quicker and I think a little more abstracted if you just say this dot style dot border. All right, so that'll change it to red when the mouse is over the canvas. And I'm not claiming that this is something you'd necessarily want to do ever, but I'm just using it as an example to show you how once you place a P5 canvas on your screen, you can interact with it. So I'll refresh this page, and okay, so you can, unfortunately my mouse was already there. Let me try that again. So refreshing, you can see it's green when it starts, and then as soon as I hover, it turns red. Okay, unfortunately, when I move my mouse back out, it doesn't reset the color back to green. If I wanted to do something like that, I could take this code here, copy it, okay, and this time instead of mouse over, I'm going to listen for a different event, and that's called mouse out. Right? That's when the mouse leaves, and in that case, I'm just going to turn it right back to green, like that. Okay, so now you can see here, I'll refresh the page. So it's green, it's red, it's green, it's red, and so we have that behavior. Now clearly we're interacting with the canvas. The canvas has event listeners that are able to pick up events that happen on the canvas. And you're going to find that going forward, this is a really powerful thing that you can use. For example, when you're writing game or when you're creating games, or you know, anything like that. Okay. One other thing. This canvas right now is positioned last on the page. And here's what I mean by that. If I come back to my HTML and I add some other element to my page, so let's say I add a paragraph tag, and I say, let's see, when you hover over the canvas, its border will change color. Okay. So look at the page now, and you'll see that that paragraph is still above the canvas. So I have the header, I have the paragraph, and then I have the canvas. And the reason for this is that the canvas doesn't get created until the entire body of the document has loaded. And that's happening because the canvas is created in a script. So now normally you would say to yourself, yeah, but the script is loaded here before the body even gets parsed. But the way it works, and I mentioned this early on, is that P5 knows enough to wait and not to run the setup function until the entire document is, the body of the document is already built. So P5 will wait for this, all of the stuff in here to be created, and then it will run setup. And then it will create the canvas, which means the canvas will always be the last thing created on the page after any of these elements that you put here. Now that's not always ideal, because sometimes you might want that canvas to be at the top. You might want to have paragraphs and buttons and things after it. Right? So you need a way to control the placement of the canvas since it's the last thing created. How do I stick it somewhere else on the page? Maybe I want to put it in between the header and the paragraph. Okay, so how would I do that? Well, let me show you that, and then we'll wrap up. So first off, I'm going to go back to my index.html file that I have open here, and I'll create a div. And that div is going to be the container that I stick the canvas into. So I want to create that div in between the header and the paragraph, and I'll give it an ID. and I'll just call it canvas dash container. And I won't put anything in it. I won't size it. I won't do anything else. I'll just like that. Okay. All right. That by itself won't change anything. If I refresh the page, there's no change at all. If I go into my console and I look at the elements on the page, I can kind of hover around and see where things are. And so if I go here, I can look at first of all, that's the body. That's the header. You can see the div right there, and it's kind of just pointing to the space in between the header and the paragraph. You can see it actually tells you how wide and how tall it is. It has a height right now of 0. And then I have the paragraph, and then I have the canvas. Okay, so the div is there, but it doesn't take up any size, and certainly the canvas is not in it. So I haven't achieved yet what I want to achieve. Now I'm going to come back to my drawing script, and again inside setup, and I can do this either up here after I create the canvas, or I can do it down here after I attach the event listeners. Either place is fine. What I'm going to do is simply, it's one command, and I'm going to say canv dot parent. And in this case, you actually want to use canv, not canv.elt, because I'm not trying to access the actual HTML5 canvas element itself. Instead, I'm trying to access the p5.js canvas object, which is much bigger than just the HTML5 canvas itself. That p5.js canvas object has some methods, one of which is .parent, which sets the parent of the canvas. The parent of the canvas is the element that the canvas lives inside. The canvas is the child of this particular parent. And so you can probably figure that the parent that I want to set is the div that I just created a little while ago. And so what you can do is you just pass the ID of that div. Here it is, canvas container, right here. You just pass that ID right inside here into the parent property, or I should say it's the argument to the parent method, like that. And that's all you have to do. That will then take the canvas and stick it inside that particular div. And since that div was created higher up the page, it'll move the canvas to be inside of there. It'll be in that position here. Let's check it out. Refreshing the page. Okay, there you go. Now you can see, as I look at the elements on the page, as I kind of scroll through, you can see there's the header. There's the div where it always was, but now it actually takes up space because it's got a canvas in it, and the canvas was a fixed size. I made it 500 by 300. And you can see inside the div, there's the actual canvas. There's the div, which takes up the whole block all the way across the page. There's the canvas inside the div, so div, canvas. And then there's the paragraph. And then that's the end of the body. Okay? All right. So obviously, lots more is possible. I haven't done anything significant with the draw function, and there's certainly no animation yet, anything like that. I'm not listening for mouse pressed events or anything like that. But this is just kind of an introduction to show you a couple of things that I thought would be useful to help you get started. By the way, how did I figure out how to do this? Well, it's all here online, and you can see here in the wiki for processing p5.js, you can see some of the details on how canvases are created and positioned. And down here at the bottom is where I learned how to set the parent for the canvas and to stick it in that div. So this code that you see down here is basically all that I'm implementing in my own sketch over here. All right, so that should get you started, and I'll be back shortly with another tutorial involving how we actually create variables and objects and stick them on the canvas, and then how we animate them and I'll ultimately kind of conclude this series of tutorials by showing you how to make a basic game using p5.js. Thanks for watching.